What's up? My name is Ken Dumbo, the MC with the sauce. Don't forget to subscribe to J. Cool.
Parliamentary proceedings would obviously have observed by now that I have been suspended from Parliament for the next 7 working days. Now, interestingly, the Speaker has decided to suspend me. Of course, her statement is that her hands are tied. Obviously, no one knows as to who has tied her hands, but obviously, she's put in a corner to a point where she's decided to send me out of the House. For those of you who may be interested to understand why I've been sent out of the House, you wish to know that as of yesterday, the Minister of Finance brought an item into Parliament, namely that he wanted to have Parliament to approve a supplementary budget. So for those of you who may want to understand, so last year in 2024, we did approve the national budget for 2025, which stood at 217 billion kwacha. Now, midway this year, the Minister of Finance has come back to Parliament to ask that we add an addition to that supplementary budget to a tune of 33.6 billion kwacha. Now, out of that 33.6 billion kwacha, part of that component is going to be borrowed. Okay, it means that the Minister of Finance is asking that we borrow 14.8 billion kwacha commercially. Now, for those of you who understand commercially, it means that we are going to go to commercial banks. And in this case, we are borrowing those funds locally. Interestingly, we are borrowing at 13.5%. Now, if you put together, because the law of this land says when government wants to borrow, they must come to Parliament to ask for Parliament to approve that borrowing. So for the 2025 national budget, the minister asked Parliament to borrow 15.5 billion kwacha. Today he has come back to Parliament that we borrow 14.8 billion kwacha. Now, added together, we are borrowing 30.6 billion kwacha towards the 2025 national budget. Now, for those who wants to again understand further, 30.5 billion kwacha means we are borrowing $1.27 billion. So you can imagine this country is contracting a debt per annum of $1.27 billion. Now, this is not the issue. The issue with our friends in the UPND today is that yesterday, I wondered, why is it that the Minister of Finance is all interested in borrowing instead of us harnessing natural resources? Of course, there was a controversial issue, around which the Minister of Infrastructure raised a point of order in which I suggested, could it be that there are people who are getting commissions out of this borrowing? Now, today when we were discussing this item, I was on the floor, and in the borrowing plan, so these items you must clearly mark out. Today, the minister wants to borrow 14.8 billion kwacha, and that is going to be at 7% commercial interest terms. All right, as opposed to them borrowing concessionally as they promised many years ago that they will not be contracting, expensive money. They've decided to go to commercial banks at 7%, all right, without any grace period, meaning that repayment can even start tomorrow. Now, further to that, the plan also provides that there is going to be a handling fee of not more than 1%. So in my submission, what seems not to have settled very well with my friends on the opposite side is that I mentioned that, you remember yesterday, you censured me on the issue of commissions. And here I am reading a report, and there's a statement to suggest that there's going to be a handling fee of 1%. I did not accuse anybody of getting a commission, but those of you who understand, when you say handling fee, a handling fee is a commission. So somewhere, somehow, somebody is getting a 1% handling fee. It could be the bank, or God knows who could be getting that 1% handling fee. Now, this is where I have a problem myself, and I keep wondering, why are we going to be borrowing $1.27 billion in one fiscal year when we have got resources, when we have other minerals where we could fall back on? So could it be that this insatiable appetite to continue borrowing away from concessional terms to commercial terms be necessitated because there is something called a handling fee? Now, this is apparently what has not sat down well with our friends on the opposite side, and they raised points of order. The speaker ruled that I was out of order, from nowhere. I was being censured to a point where I'm being sent out of Parliament. For me, I don't have a problem being sent out of Parliament. I can be sent out of Parliament even for a whole year. But that does not stop me from questioning the decisions and indecisions of government. And I'm basically doing my job. If the people of Zambia will feel that I'm overdoing it, I am very available to stop. I can stop questioning this government, but I think that I've got a duty to continue to question the decisions and indecisions of government. In which case, for me, I am questioning, why does the UPND government, who were elected on the premise that they will do away with borrowing, today they are borrowing $1.2 billion in one fiscal year? And that is not concessional terms. They are borrowing commercially. And if a government borrows from the local bank, it means you are crowding out the credit that must be available, the finances that must be available for private sector growth. It means that the private sector wants to go to the bank to borrow, will find no money. And even if they're going to find a little money, it will be very expensive money. This is a government on one hand that wants to promote growth of the private sector, growth of the economy on the other hand, stifling the growth of that sector by pulling out all the resources, taking it into these borrowings. So I leave it up to you, the citizens, to judge. If I want to repeat, if I'm being excessive by holding this government accountable, I'm very free to keep quiet in Parliament. But if you believe that I must continue to pursue this government, to ask them questions over their decision and indecision, then I am your friend. I'm going to continue doing my job. That's all I wanted to inform you, dear friends.
Thank you. Thank you
very much.
Thank you. We just want to underscore that Parliament comes from the French word parler. Parliament comes from the French word parler, which means speak out. And if there's only one thing we come here to do is to speak on behalf of our constituencies and on behalf of the entire country. So any matter of national interest, it's our job to speak. And when the government of the day is borrowing, indebting the country, we speak. When they were in the opposition, they used to speak. On Eurobond, they spoke. But Eurobond, we are borrowing Eurobond at 3%. Now, as my colleague has said, they are borrowing at 7%. 13.5%. And they were saying the PF was borrowing, Michael Sata was borrowing, Edgar Lungu was borrowing. And that was 7 years period, or 2 years, 10 years period total of the two presidents. Them, they have tripled the level of borrowing quickly. Every month, every day, they borrow. As my colleague has said, all this supplementary budget is doing is masking, because to borrow, the constitution says you have to come back to Parliament. So they came here in the budget and we approved. Now they've finished the borrowing limit. They want to borrow some more, so they hide the borrowing in the supplementary budget. This is mid-year. The budget has not even finished. That's what the supplementary is all about. So we stand behind our colleague, the Kana MP, Binwell Mpundu, and all these gimmicks of sending him out, suspending him, is to try and shut him up. I know him, he will not shut up. Even us, as the PF United, will not shut up. We'll follow the standing order, and no standing order stops us from speaking. We'll speak on every matter that is of concern to the nation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Comrade. I want to confirm that we stand with Comrade Binwell Mpundu. I think countrymen and women, you will agree with me that our MP is a gallant soldier. He has stood for the good of this nation, and we want to encourage him to continue speaking. Now, the issue that has been on the floor, for those that have been following the proceedings, has been on borrowing. And I think that Binwell may have, Honorable Mpundu may have crossed somebody's path when he talked about commissions. And when he was censured, because he referred to some commissions, he wanted to find out who was getting these commissions. He also wondered whether the motivation for the finance minister to continue borrowing was because of those commissions. It was a question on the floor of the House. He was censured and meant to withdraw. Now, today, he actually discovered that it's provided for under arrangement fee. Arrangement fee, we all know, is a commission. So when he asked to say, look, there's almost $12 million, in this particular borrowing. So who's getting the $12 million? Because this is a lot of money.
So that seemed not to have settled very well with some of our colleagues. Now, it's very evident that I think Binwell Mpundu's name was discussed even outside Parliament. The Speaker has acted not acted in a non-partisan manner, because she started by saying, "My hands are tied." We are very worried. If a speaker, a presiding officer is going to come to Parliament with her hands tied, we begin to question who tied her hands? Who tied the speaker's hands? Why should the honorable member be victimized by those who are tying the speaker's hands?
Who is tying?
So, Honorable Chisangano, this is not a decision. The decision to suspend Binwell Mpundu is not a decision. She came into Parliament with tied hands. We want to appeal to Madam Speaker, Honorable Chisangano, that please let her hands be freed so that members of Parliament, other members, don't fall victim, like Honorable Mpundu has fallen victim. There is nothing wrong, not even in the eyes of Honorable Chisangano, that Binwell has done. The people that tied the Speaker's hands are the people that have something wrong with what Binwell is saying. Now, we'll say this and we'll say this again. We, as members of Parliament, have been sent to this House to also fight corruption. We have defined corruption not as a mere giving or receiving of bribes, but it involves decisions that are made in favor of private capital at the expense of public interest. This can come in a form of legislation, policy, and administration. So, for instance, if people are talking about arrangement fees, we want to know who is getting these arrangement fees. 1%. The 1%. Because we are here to fight corruption. As members of Parliament, we will betray our friends that are in prison today, members like Munia Zulu, who were pursuing corruption and ended up in prison. I want to say we will not stop to interrogate, to ask questions, difficult questions. Why is it that our friends in the UPND are easily catching feelings whenever we talk about commissions? The past 3 days, there have been issues on the floor of the House ever since the supplementary budget came. Why are they catching feelings when we talk about issues of commissions? Honorable Mpundu is elected member of Parliament to fall victim because he asked about arrangement fees. So Zambians, we want to say, please wake up. Let's begin to understand what is really going on. The UPND government will continue tying the hands of presiding officers, and many more members are likely to leave Parliament on suspension because the presiding officer's hands will be tied, and they'll be instructed to say, remove Chisopa, tomorrow remove Mao Sampa, Munduvile must leave, Kafuaya must leave. So our presiding officers are working under very difficult situations. I want to call upon our presiding officers to remain steadfast. For once, let them stand for what is right. Let them stand straight. Let them stand upright to ensure that the proceedings in Parliament proceed without any disturbance. So, Comrade Mpundu, we stand with you, my brother.
Thank you, my leader.
We stand with you, my brother.
We are going. We'll go and ask you again on his behalf for the 1%.
1%.
Who is
Because the talk was about concession loans, concessional loans.
Yeah.
We were vilified as a government. We were vilified as a government. But today they're getting loans at 13%. Within there's even an arrangement fee. So if we ask who's getting that commission,
1%.
what offense have we committed? You know that you have not committed the
background.
Let me know what you think about this video. Thanks for tuning in to JQ News. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates on tech, politics, and everything in between. Until next time, stay cool.